You're watching 101. We're talking with the founder of Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales. Now, what do you see as the defining moment? Where was that point, the turning point in your life?
I mean, I think you know, with my work, the real turning point is, interestingly enough, the birth of my daughter. She was born December 26th, and Wikipedia was founded January 15th. And what had happened was I had the Newpedia project, and it was not doing very well. It was sort of slow, and something wasn't quite right about it. Then Kira was born, and when she was born, she was very, very sick. And there was a fabulous doctor who saved her life, essentially. And it was a very intense time period, several days when we didn't know, touch and go, what's going to happen. And I really came through that. I mean, you can imagine the birth of your first child, and it's very an intense experience. And so at that moment, that was when I said, you know what, this Newpedia thing, like, it's really important. This idea of a free encyclopedia is really important. And I've been thinking of making some changes, and this is it, right? I'm going to make radical changes. I'm going to, you know, completely change the way we're doing things. We're going to try something radically new because it's too important to sort of let it sort of stumble along and fail like this. And so that was a real, that short 2 or 3 weeks of my life were very critical. And what was interesting was, once we launched the Wiki software for people to start working on Wikipedia, we had more work done in 2 weeks than we had done in 2 years before. I mean, it was really like that we said, oh, this is it. This is the way we're going to do this.
You went from world of finance, which isn't really altruistic, suddenly into this, you know, open source and everything else. As with these sort of jobs, many people who go through a tough entrepreneurial period, it takes its personal toll. It's cost you a couple of marriages, and you know, it's affected obviously the way you had to think your life. And I wonder how you've had to rethink the way you structure the way you live.
You know, it's interesting because a lot of things do take a personal toll, and you make decisions in life that are very complicated, and you're never quite sure if they're the right ones or not. You try to treat everyone with dignity and respect and hope they do the same for you. And in my life, I've been very fortunate that the people close to me have remained close to me, and that you know, we've really transitioned in healthy ways and so forth. But yeah, it's not easy sometimes.
Of course, you're in the public eye, very much a public figure now, and it's something no one can take away. You are the founder of Wikipedia. But it brings along with it obviously all the pressures and stuff and the controversies. And how do you personally handle that? Because there's constant barrage of stuff about, you know, you and Larry Sanger, the founding of it, and you know, your personal history and stuff.
Yeah, you know, it's really interesting because the truth is I'm not really famous, you know, but what has happened online is that there is a certain kind of a subculture in which people who aren't really famous, sort of more generally, are famous within a certain category, and you get treated like you know, like you're on the front page of tabloids and things. It's a very strange sort of thing. For me, I think the best way to deal with it is just ignore it as much as possible. You know, just to say, you know, this is all kind of silly. It's sort of people just having a bit of fun, or sometimes they're like very angry people and they're working out their anger, and that's really their problem, not mine.
Although it's hard, you're in the information business, so you know, if you touch your own Wikipedia site, suddenly everyone's up in arms and stuff.
Yeah. No, it's actually very interesting. It's actually become a bit difficult for me to do my work in certain respects, because a big part of what I do within the Wikipedia community is work with the community on editorial quality and really trying to help guide the process and help get things to be better. And what's interesting, if I go to a particular article in Wikipedia and I read it and I say, well, this is horrible, right? And so then my first instinct is, of course, I just go to one of the mailing lists and I say, hey, everybody, look at this article. It's really horrible. Let's figure out what happened here. The next thing I knew, you know, there's a news story that says Jimmy Wales says the article on Jane Fonda is horrible, which actually happened once, right? And it was like, oh, I was just trying to do my work here, you know, and I didn't realize that it was public in this kind of way.
It becomes political commentary as opposed to just the...
Yeah, no, exactly. So, you know, that's kind of forced me to be a little more careful, you know, what I say online and what I say in different places and things like that.
Because it is all about people, isn't it? It's all about other people doing everything, you know, it's a community thing.
It absolutely is.
You don't have many employees running it.
Yeah, no, and it's really an interesting thing because it's, you know, we're a community and a generally healthy community, but like any community, there's a lot of sort of dramas and things like this that go on, and people who stir up trouble, whether innocently or on purpose and things like that. Just, you know, it's people. And a lot of people think of Wikipedia as a technology story, But in fact, it really has very little to do with technology. I mean, the technology of the internet is there, but the basic technology of Wikipedia, it's well, you need a database and some text, and it's really not some radical technological invention, but it is a social invention, and so it's really about helping people think through, what kind of social rules do we need that are both, simultaneously, open and generous and letting lots of people participate and have legitimate disputes and disagreements in a fair and open way, versus also saying, you know what, at some point, this is no longer like a fair and open dispute. This is just somebody being a jerk, And finding that balance is really what it's all about. I mean, that's really the secret of Wikipedia, if there is one.
How are you coping with the travel? I gather you're still on the road about 2/3 of the year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I really do think that travel is something that more people should do, more Americans should do in general, because you really do get a completely different perspective on the world. Somebody knew that I was going to be seeing you on your show, and they said, Al Jazeera, is that safe? And I said, come on, it's a TV channel, and I've met the guy a few times. He seems like he's a nice guy, right? He's a pretty harmless guy, and I think it's because people, they get too much information from a very narrow source of media. You really, unless you actually go somewhere and visit and actually see people, and that's the point where you really start to realize, yeah, you know what? There are these huge cultural differences in different places in the world, but everybody, everywhere, pretty much wants to go home and play with their kids, right? They want a job that pays a decent wage. They want to be treated fairly in life. A lot of the kinds of disputes that people imagine are really not felt by anyone. Americans have no interest in sort of waging war on whoever, right? They may be convinced to do something, and they feel that whatever geopolitical things make it necessary. And the same thing, other than maybe a tiny handful of really sort of whacked out extremists, in every country that the U.S. seems to have a problem with, I believe, 99.9% of the people are just like, I got my kids here, right, and we want to watch a little TV in the evenings and play some ball with my boy, and all these kinds of things. That's what people care about, and it's something that you really get out of travel. You really sort of realize, like, oh, well, people are kind of the same everywhere, and it's such an important lesson.
What would you like to achieve in the long run? I mean, with your brand, with in your own life as well.
So I think the main thing is, I have this vision of a free encyclopedia for every single person on the planet in their own language. And right now we're doing really well in all the European languages, in Japanese. Chinese is doing reasonably well, despite we were blocked for a couple of years in China, but we're unblocked at the moment. Arabic, as I said, I think should be bigger, but it's still at 60,000 articles, so well on its way. African languages, it's a bit of a
60,000
disaster.
compared to what in English?
2.5 million in English, but that's really not a fair comparison, because English is spoken by a lot more people, particularly when you consider English as a second language. Right. And when you look at, actually, what's interesting about it is when you look at Arabic from the perspective of the number of people who have access, broadband internet access, it's actually it's right in line. It's as expected, and so we want to encourage that kind of growth, but. We've got probably, I think another 20 or 30 years before I will feel like, hey, we actually have done what we set out to do. So it's fun to keep working on it anyway.
What would you like your legacy to be? How would you like people to remember Jimmy Wales?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't normally think in those terms. I mean, I really do, when people, are trying to figure out, like, how do I think of myself? I think of myself as just basically a friendly person, so I get tagged with a lot of these sort of labels of internet visionary, and a lot of times people like to introduce me with a very sort of dramatic pose, and well, I'm just this kid from Alabama trying to say, hey everybody, let's do something fun, and
let's read and write.
Let's read and write. It's going to be kind of cool, and these smart guys invented the internet. Let's do something useful with it. So I mean, for me, that's kind of it. To say, look. This is a guy who had a good idea and just sort of cheered everybody on and said, yeah, let's build this. But they're the ones who built it.
Jimmy, I wish you a lot of luck. Thank you very much for talking.
Thanks for having me on.
Cheers.